a couple of things here. One, they should have won that first round series. We've said it so many different times. They should have won that series against the New York Rangers if it wasn't for Crosby's injury, Raquel's injury, and Jari and DeSmith. Like the fact that they were down to Louis Domingue in net also hampered them as well. So I think that's something you have to look at and say, okay, they would have been in at least the second round with that lineup. And secondly, you didn't really get that much time with Rickard Rakell, and his addition changes the lineup so vastly because it solidifies the top six in a way that it wasn't before that trade was made. So I do think it's a lot different whenever you look at the lineup, and we can bring it up here. This is what I have as the prospective lineup as of right now. I know people have it different ways. Our Pens poll for next week will say that's differently. But for our listeners that aren't watching this on YouTube at Inside the Penguins, the lineup that we have forward-wise has one open spot, and that is fourth line left wing. We have the top six of Gensel, Crosby, Raquel, Zucker, Malkin, Rust. That's, I think, undoubtedly the six names that'll be up there. Whichever formation, we'll talk about that on Monday. But then the third line now is Heinen, Carter, Kapanen, which is 100 times better than what we saw heading into this week, or I should say before the Kapanen signing late last week. And then on your fourth line, you have Bluger and McGinn, and then a question mark at fourth line left wing, or it could be right wing because McGinn plays either side. So let me ask you this, Warwatt. With that one roster spot remaining, there are so many names that could fill it in. Who do you think would fill in that spot on the roster?
For the love of God, somebody new. I just want to see a fresh face or two. I get we're going to have a ton of that on the defense. Running down some of these names here, I think Alex Nylander, maybe Drew O'Connor's supposed to have a good fight for a lineup spot. Even Drake Caggiula. I've said it last episode. I'm very interested in what he can do on this team. Ryan Paling's supposed to help. Again, every single name here is a name we've discussed possibly being in our bottom six. If I had to just pick one, I think if I had to put my money on it, I would place it down on, I don't know the betting odds on this, someone get on that. Drew O'Connor's going to find that last spot.
When I look at these names, obviously, like we mentioned before, last Friday, there was three of these guys that would have had to be in the lineup for the Penguins to fill out a lineup. So the fact that it's down to one is a good sign for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's not lie about that fact. But when I look at this list, Drew O'Connor, Ryan Poehling, you talked about, you said you like Drake Caggiula, Josh Archibald is in that mix, so is Radim Zohorna and Alex Nylander. But when you look at these names, even though I think they're all supposedly going to get a fair shake at trying to win that last spot, I see Drake Caggiula and Josh Archibald as the replacements for Brian Boyle and Anthony Angelo, basically. That's how I see them. Guys that are injury replacements and guys that will, not even Brian Boyle, because I don't think either of them will be at the NHL level to start the season. I think it's really between Drew O'Connor and Ryan Poehling. And I would think that O'Connor has a little bit of a leg up just because he's been in the system. Sullivan does like him a lot. But Poehling, why else would you have brought him in here if not to be a guy that goes on the fourth line? He can, I believe he can kill penalties. I have to double check that. I'm just blanking on it right now. But he has a little bit of a scoring touch, and it's kind of unprecedented how quickly that went away in Montreal. So if he regains it there, maybe that's a scoring touch for the Penguins' fourth line to go along with Bluger and McGinn. So I think it's between O'Connor and Poehling, and right now I would give the leg up, honestly, to Poehling. I think he would end up winning that, even though going into training camp, O'Connor has a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, you're totally right about O'Connor having the advantage. I wouldn't mind seeing Poehling again because it's a new face. It's something fresh especially for the bottom six, which you're kind of supposed to change in and out every year. But I just always get stuck on guys that Hextall or Sullivan hasn't spoken at all yet, but guys that Hextall or coaches speak of by name, which was Josh Archibald at one point, which was Drew O'Connor at one point. So I will usually stick to those guys first, but Ryan Poehling, I don't hate either. It probably is going to come down to O'Connor or Poehling, though.
And I think whenever you look at the actual roster, let me pull that back up here for those fine folks over on YouTube. But you look at the defense, again, this is just something that we have put together. Dumo, Letang, Ruda, Petrie, Pedersen, Ruhwedel. Realistically, you could probably switch Ruda and Pedersen. You could switch Ruda, Pedersen, put in Ty Smith and take Ruhwedel out. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and we'll see whenever training camp comes around in late September. But I think when you look at this roster, even though it is pretty similar on the front end, I think this is a roster that would be as good, if not better, than what we saw from the Pittsburgh Penguins last season, just considering the fact that Jason Zucker, if he can stay healthy, is so much better than what they got out of him last year. Brock McGinn, I think if he can get consistent play, and I wrote a story about that for Inside the Penguins, he's going to be a lot better than what we saw of last year. And same with Kapanen. Like, there's no way he could be that bad, and a full year of Rickard Rakell can only mean good things, in my opinion. So I think this is a roster and a lineup that is as good, if not better, than what we saw from the Penguins last season. And that's a Penguins team that should have been in at least the second round, potentially even the Eastern Conference Finals.